They say the Holloway bell never needed a rope. It rang itself at exactly 3:12 a.m. every night, a single hollow toll that crawled under doorways and slipped through locked windows. No living soul ever saw the bell move. No hand ever pulled its clapper. Yet every midnight, that ghostly sound drifted across the empty halls of Holloway Manor, and with it, another person vanished. In 1921, 7 nuns arrived at the iron gates, silent as shadows. They wore thick black habits and carried no luggage. Neighbors watched from behind curtains as the sisters passed, pale faces hidden under deep hoods. The fog seemed to part before them, then swallow them whole. That night, the bell tolled once, and the first of 84 souls was gone. By sunrise, the manor stood deserted. Candles burned low in the chapel. Fresh footprints led to the edge of the cliff, then stopped. A stray boot lay broken on the rocks. Inside, a single row of empty chairs faced the bell tower. No letter, no warning, only the echo of that midnight chime. They called the sisters the silent brides, 7 women who never spoke a prayer out loud, yet carried a secret darker than death. Townsfolk dared not mention their names after nightfall. Mothers warned children, do not wander near the fog. Farmers shuttered windows at dusk. Travelers who heard that single bell toll on the road dropped to their knees begging mercy from a silent God. Tonight you will hear that bell too. You will feel the fog coil around your ankles. You will want to turn away, but you cannot. Because every story needs a witness, and this time, the bell has chosen you. September 1921. The full moon hung low over the pine trees, casting silver light on the silent tracks. A single steam engine appeared through the fog, its whistle soft but urgent. The train slowed as it reached Holloway Station, a tiny stop in rural Oregon that saw almost no travelers after dark. At exactly midnight, the carriage doors swung open. 7 women stepped down. They wore long black habits that brushed the edges of the wooden platform. Their faces were hidden under deep veils, and each moved with a calm, steady grace. They carried no suitcases. They spoke no words. A lantern's glow from the station house fell on their gloved hands. White gloves, clean and tight. No footprints led to the steps, only the soft hiss of steam and the hiss of fog sliding over rails. The women kept their heads bowed and their lips stayed still. Behind them, the train's wheels rattled once and then fell silent. The engine let out a final sigh before the conductor climbed down and tipped his hat. The conductor's eyes flicked nervously between the women, but he said nothing. He moved away as if the sisters had power over words themselves. A black carriage waited at the edge of the platform. Its windows were dark. No lamps glowed behind the glass. A single driver stood beside it, hat pulled low over his face. He held the reins of 2 striking black horses. The horses stamped their hooves in the gravel as steam curled around their breath. One by one, the sisters climbed into the carriage. The lantern light caught on the metal rails and on the pale skin of their gloved hands. Then the door closed. The horses started forward without a sound. Their hooves clicked on the tracks as the carriage moved away, swallowed by the mist. Locals who lived in small houses nearby told tales later. They said the sisters moved like shadows through the fog. They said the fog seemed to part for them, making a silent path. No word, no sound, no greeting, just 7 figures in black, stepping through the night. A farmer named Harper claimed he saw their eyes glow white when the moonlight struck the veils. He swore one of the sisters looked straight at him, though he couldn't see a face. Another neighbor, Mrs. Collins, said she felt an icy chill when she passed the station the next morning. She felt watched, though no one was there. By sunrise, the carriage had reached Holloway Manor. The manor sat on a high cliff overlooking the restless ocean. Thorny vines climbed its stone walls. The air smelled of salt and decay. The front gates swung open as if they had been waiting for the sisters all along. Footsteps echoed through the empty courtyard as the sisters emerged. They lined up on the marble steps of the grand entrance. Their veils blew in the sea breeze. They paused for a moment as if saying a silent prayer. Then they entered the manor without a sound. Inside, candlelight flickered along tall hallways, cobwebs draped from chandeliers. Dust lay thick on the velvet chairs. No one had lived there for years, but the sisters moved through the rooms like they belonged. They reached a large drawing room. A grand piano sat in one corner, its keys yellowed with age. A portrait of the original Holloway family hung above the fireplace. The sisters stopped before it. For the first time, one lifted her hand, pointing at the painting. Then they turned, walked deeper into the manor, and disappeared behind a heavy oak door. In the distance, the wind rattled the windows. The sound of sea waves crashing against rocks far below carried through the halls. No voices called from the rooms, no laughter, no prayer, only the soft creak of floorboards as the sisters made their way through the empty house. Why it matters. In one midnight hour, 7 strangers arrived with no explanation. They carried no luggage, spoke no greetings, and left no trail. The manor's gates creaked open for them, as if they held a key no one else possessed. Their silent procession painted a question on every heart in Holloway. Who were these women, and why did they choose a place that time had forgotten? Every detail mattered, the glowing eyes in the fog, the tight gloves, the unseen faces under veils. Even the horses seemed to tread quiet, lie, as if afraid to wake something ancient that slept within the manor walls. No one knew their names, no one knew their purpose. But everyone would remember the night the Midnight Sisters arrived at Holloway Manor, and the silence that followed. They stepped into a long, narrow hallway lit by flickering candles. The walls were painted a dull grey, peeling in places. Dozens of children stood in 2 straight lines against the walls. Each child wore a plain grey tunic, faded and worn. Their heads were bowed, their hands were clasped behind their backs. Every child had a thin scarf wrapped tightly around their mouth. The scarves were rough linen, stained by time. No one knew who had wrapped them or why their voices had been silenced. When the candles flickered, the scarves trembled, but no sound came out. A slow, steady drip echoed in the corridor. Water leaked from a crack in the stone ceiling. The children did not move toward the water. They did not wipe the drops from their scarves. They simply stood still, like statues carved from stone. A gentle breeze drifted down the hall, carrying the smell of damp earth and old wood. The children's hair moved slightly, but their scarves stayed firmly in place. Their eyes were wide, filled with fear and confusion. Some stared at the cold floor, others stared at the candle flames dancing on the walls. At the end of the hallway, a single lamp burned beside a bulletin board. The board was made of rough cork and framed in dark wood. Tacked to it were small pieces of paper, each with a name written in neat handwriting. Names like Mary Owens, Thomas Kim, Helena Vargas. 84 names in all. A gloved hand reached out and pulled one paper free. The name, Samuel Larkin, fluttered to the floor. A servant in a dark habit swept it into a linen pouch without a word, a quiet nod, and the pouch closed with a soft snap. On the board, a blank space remained where Samuel's name had been. The servant pressed another name into the pouch. Aisha Patel, then David Cheng. One by one, the names peeled away like autumn leaves falling from a tree. 84 names, 83, 82. With each removed name, the corridor emptied by one child. No one cried out. No one protested. Only the dripping water and the soft shuffle of feet broke the silence. The children who remained did not look at the empty spaces on the board. They did not look at each other. They looked straight ahead, as if they were being held by invisible strings. An old caretaker passed along the line with a lantern. His face was lined with worry. He paused at a boy whose eyes glistened behind his scarf. The boy trembled. The caretaker placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, leaned close, and whispered words the camera could not catch. The boy did not nod. He only stood a little straighter. The caretaker moved on. At each step, another name disappeared. Another child was led away. The scarves stayed tight over their mouths. Their eyes followed the retreating figures until they turned the corner. After Samuel, Aisha, and David, the board showed 81 names. 80, 79. Each time a name was erased, the remaining children seemed to shrink by a fraction of an inch. Their shoulders slumped, their heads dipped lower. A high window let in pale moonlight. It cast long shadows of the children on the stone floor. The shadows stretched out like dark fingers, reaching for something beyond the walls. But the children never turned to look at their shadows. They stood in perfect silence. At the far end of the hallway, a heavy wooden door opened. A nun in a black habit stepped out. She held a small black book in her hands. The book was unmarked. No title, no letters on its cover. She searched for names on the bulletin board, finger tracing each line. When she found one, she tapped the paper gently. A soft click, and the paper came loose. She read the name silently, then closed the book with a snap. She handed the book to a younger sister. The younger nun nodded and tucked the book under her arm. She then took a small silver key from her waist and walked to the next child in line. That child's eyes trembled, but no sound escaped the scarf. The nun opened a small door set into the wall. The door was no higher than the child's waist. Behind it was a dark passageway. The nun lifted the child by the elbow and guided him inside. The child's feet moved quickly, scared but obedient. He vanished into the darkness. The nun closed the door gently and turned back to the remaining children. Her black habit rustled softly with the motion. The lantern light flickered. A small mouse scurried across the floor, heading toward the dark passage. It paused in front of the door, sniffed the cold stone, then darted away into a crevice. For a moment, the hallway felt even colder. On the bulletin board, another name came loose, Lily Moreno. She was fourth from the left. The nun picked up Lily's scarf and removed it before she was led away. Lily did not speak. When the scarf was off, her lips were pressed together as if the cloth had molded them. The nun placed the scarf in a basket beneath the board and closed the door behind her. 78 names, 77, 76. By the time the last few names were removed, only a handful of children remained. Their scarves were damp around the edges, as if they had been washed too many times. Their eyes glowed in the lantern, light, wide and terrified. One child, no more than 8 years old, raised a small fist against the scarf. Her eyes met the camera. She blinked once, as if to say, "Help me," but no sound came out. The edges of her eyes glistened with tears. The nun paused, then reached out and patted the girl's shoulder. She spoke in a soft, gentle tone. The girl nodded, as if she understood. Then the nun led her to the passage and closed the door. At last, only 2 names remained on the board, Anna Hughes and Michael O'Leary. The children standing before the board were the tallest. They were older, maybe 15 or 16. Anna stood straight, shoulders squared. Her scarf was tied neatly, but her eyes burned with defiance. Michael's head dipped low. He trembled as if cold, though the hallway was warm with candlelight. The sister with the black book stepped forward. She opened it to the next blank page. She wrote both names in neat script. Then she closed the book and locked it with the silver key. The sister unlocked the door for Anna first. Anna stepped through, her scarf slipping from her lips as if loosened by magic. She turned once, her eyes meeting those of her friends. Then she walked on, vanishing into the dark. Michael was last. He stood alone before the door. He pressed a hand against the stone wall as if testing its strength. Then he took a deep breath. He stepped through the door, and the hall was empty. The candles flickered. The shadows on the walls grew still. Only the drip of water broke the quiet. The bulletin board stood bare, 84 empty spaces where names once hung. A final low voice sounded from somewhere in the manor, chanting a soft prayer. The words were hushed, almost too quiet to hear. The candles dimmed as if bowing to the prayer. Then the hallway fell into total darkness, save for one small moonbeam shining through the high window. The moonbeam moved like a spottle. Crossing the bare floor and the empty walls, it rested on the locked door where the last child had disappeared. And in that moment, it felt as if the walls themselves held their breath, waiting for the next sound, the next life, the next secret hidden in the silent hearts of those who remained behind. Sister Helena moves through the dim kitchen like a ghost, her long black habit whispering against the worn wooden floor. The air smells of old stone and stale air, with a dull hint of spices long since expired. At the far corner stands the oak cabinet, dark and heavy, its surface scarred by time and by the countless hands that have brushed its edges. 7 locks hang along its front, each one unique. Round iron rings, ornate brass clasps, simple steel latches. No two look alike, and each bears a tiny, numbered tag that gleams faintly in the low light. She pauses before the cabinet, her gloved hand hovering over the first lock. Behind her, the manor is silent. No creak of floorboards, no distant footstep. Even the wind outside seems to hold its breath. Sister Helena's fingers close around the key, smooth and cold to the touch, and she fits it into the lock. There's a soft click, a whisper of metal sliding into place. She turns the key, and the lock opens. One by one, she works through all 7 locks. Each key feels slightly different in her palm. Some are heavy, some are delicate, some have carved patterns that press into her skin. With each turn and click, the tension in the room tightens, as though the very walls are watching. Finally, the last lock falls open, and the cabinet doors creak outward. Inside, the shelves are lined with 84 urns. They are plain and unadorned, each made of dull metal that catches no light. Each urn is exactly the same size and shape, small, cylindrical, and unmarked. There are no names written on them, no dates, no symbols, just the cold, blank metal surface. The only uniform marking on each urn is the single word, complete, scratched deep into the metal with a sharp tool. The letters are uneven, as if carved by a trembling hand. Next to each urn, a small number is etched, from 1 to 84. Sister Helena reaches into the cabinet and picks up urn number 42. The metal is cool, almost ice-like, and her fingers trace the word complete. She presses her thumb into the scratch, feeling the rough edges. She tilts the urn slightly, as if expecting to see something, but nothing moves inside. No ashes, no dust, nothing. It makes a hollow sound when she taps it gently with her nail. She sets number 42 back in its place and steps back. Her eyes move down the line of urns, reading each number in sequence. Each one holds the same secret. Each one stands for a life once lived, now locked away. The quiet is overwhelming. Even her own breathing seems too loud in the stillness. Above her, a single bare bulb flickers. The light casts long shadows across the urns and on the scratched word that repeats again and again. Complete. There is no comfort in that word. It feels final, like a door slammed shut, a promise broken. Sister Helena closes the cabinet doors and relocks each lock, moving in the same order she opened them. Each click resounds like a verdict. 7 locks, 7 keys, 7 sisters, 4 times 12, and then a room full of urns, each one numbered, each one bearing the same chilling word. She walks away, her steps echoing in the kitchen. Behind her the lantern swings slightly, and for a moment the urns seem to gleam red in the half-light. The smell of metal and dust lingers in the air, and you can almost hear the quiet pulse of something buried deep within the walls. No one else in Holloway Manor knows this cabinet exists. No one else dares to ask about the urns, because those who seek answers often find only silence, and sometimes worse. Doors that lock from the inside, voices cut off in mid-sentence, and the knowledge that something waits, hidden behind 7 locks in a quiet kitchen corner where no one ever thinks to look. Tonight, Sister Helena's footsteps fade into the darkness, but the cabinet remains. Its doors stand closed, its locks secure. Inside lie 84 silent vessels, each one holding a secret that may never be spoken, and carved into each the single unforgiving word, complete. They say the old chapel at Holloway Manor never had a working bell. No rope hung in the tower, no clapper swung to strike the bronze. Yet every night at exactly 3:13 a.m., a single clear ring echoes across the hollow. It starts softly, just a faint chime that drifts through empty pews and shatters the stillness. Then it swells, filling the dark woods and forgotten roads around the estate. Folks in the nearby village learn quickly to dread that sound. At first they think it must be someone up in the tower practicing some old ritual. But they know better. No guard, no caretaker ever climbs those rickety stairs after dusk. No rope, no ladder, just empty air where the bell rope should hang. Yet the sound comes every single night. On clear evenings the toll drifts like a ghost's whisper. It travels through open windows and cracks in shutters. It reaches the outhouses and the barn stalls. It slips through the lip of a mug as farmers sip their late-night tea. In every home, people cover their ears, wince, and fear the next moment, because within minutes of the bell's echo, someone always disappears. Sometimes it's the old miller, found gone from his cabin by dawn. Other times it's a visiting preacher who spent the night in the guest room. He's greeted the toll with a whispered prayer, but by sunrise, his rented horse returns alone, bridle dragging behind. Children whisper about the sound. They say it rings for them too, an invitation to step outside and follow the music into the forest. Brave kids venture out to glimpse the chapel, but come morning, they're gone, no tracks, no footprints, nothing but the faint echo of a bell. The bell itself seems to live in two worlds. When dawn breaks, villagers hurry into the chapel to search for signs of someone up in the rafters. They climb creaking ladders, examine every nail and beam, but find nothing. No rope, no ladder, no recent footprints in the dust. Just stillness and silence, as if the bell toll emerged from thin air. They measure the time by candlelight now. Farmers set their lanterns to flicker at 3:10. Townsfolk huddle in doorways, glancing at clocks as minutes slip away. At 3:13, the hush snaps apart with that lonely ring. A second later, gone. And then comes the dread. Who will be missing by morning? Some suspect witchcraft. They talk of an ancient pact signed within the chapel walls. They whisper of 7 sisters who once lived at the manor and vanished without a trace. They think the toll summons their restless spirits, claiming one soul each night to replace a sister lost long ago. Others believe in something more dire. They say the bell rings because the chapel itself hungers. Its hunger cannot be sated by prayers or offerings. It wants living breath, fresh life, to feed its dark need. Every toll is a call for a new victim, a new voice to answer the silent hymn. Church elders hold secret meetings by candlelight. They scour dusty tomes and old letters, trying to find a link between the toll and some long-forgotten curse. They read of bells cast in witch fires, bound with blood and bone, meant to trap souls rather than call the faithful. But no record mentions Holloway Chapel. It doesn't appear in any official ledger, any church registry, any map of consecrated ground. Priests dare not stay past midnight. Those who try often confess sleepless nights, cold draughts, and the sickening sense of eyes watching from the shadows. Some claim to hear a second faint ring, softer, slower, right before the real bell tolls. They say that's the warning whisper. Do not listen, do not follow. Local lawmen have tried to guard the chapel. They post men in pairs, armed with lanterns and loaded rifles. Yet each night at 3:13, the posted guards vanish as well. Their boots remain by the doorway. Their rifles lie untouched on the ground. Only the lanterns swing gently as if still held by invisible hands. Families lock their doors at sunset and bar their windows. They sound the alarm if the wind rattles shutters or a branch scrapes the eaves. But when the bell rings, nothing stops the next disappearance. Mothers weep, fathers rage, grandmothers pray in hushed tones for mercy. But mercy never comes, only the bell echoing through the dark. Stories spread beyond the village. Travelers avoid the Holloway Road after dark. Messengers deliver their letters by midday, fearful of the lonely highway at night. Merchants remove Holloway Manor from their roots. Even birdsong seems to hush near the chapel, as though nature itself recoils from that spectral chime. A few hunters claim to have tracked the sound to the foot of the old stone steps. They swear they saw a figure, tall, hooded, shrouded in twilight, lift an invisible hammer against the air. Then the ring split the night sky. They chased after the form, but it dissolved into mist, leaving only echo and fear. No one dares ring a church bell anywhere near Holloway after that. They think it might disturb whatever power claims the chapel's bell. Some villagers say the day will come when the bell's last toll will bring the end of Holloway village itself. They talk of the final ring that no one survives to tell about. Young and old pass down the warning: if you hear the midnight bell, cover your ears and count to 10. Then lock your door, fall to your knees, and hold your breath until dawn. They say if you can survive until the first crow of a rooster, you might live to see the sun. But surviving the toll offers no guarantee. Even those who hide sometimes vanish, as if the bell toll reaches them in their dreams. In the church records, hidden in a locked vault, there is a single entry, scrawled in shaky handwriting and dated 1922. Bell tolls, 7 vanish, chapel empty, no rope, no explanation. That entry stands alone, surrounded by blank pages. It is the last official mention before the records trail off into silence. Some say the bell tolls because the sisters who built the chapel bargained for protection. They offered to ring the bell each night, promising their faith would guard the manor, but they misunderstood the power they invoked. They did not realize the bell would ring itself, calling for more than prayers, nor did they foresee that each toll would demand a life. Now, almost a century later, the toll still rings. No one lives at the chapel, no one tends the grounds, the windows are boarded, the doors locked, yet the bell tolls on time every night, as if held by invisible hands, and people still vanish. So when you hear that distant chime, remember, it does not ask permission, it demands an offering, it expects payment, and if you hesitate, if you question, if you dare to search for rope or clapper, then the toll will find you too, because once the bell's echo aches your soul, it never truly leaves. That is why the Hollow hears no more bells. That is why Holloway Manor stands abandoned, its chapel left to shadows and sorrow, because some echoes are born not of iron and rope, but of promises made in darkness, and some promises can never be broken. They say the stained glass windows in Holloway Chapel were meant to comfort the faithful, but these panels do anything but. Crafted in 1919, each window shows an angel in silent agony, faces twisted, eyes hollow, wings broken. By day, the glass filters soft colors across the chapel floor, pale blues where sorrow lives, gentle gold where hope once dwelled. Yet, at sunrise, something terrible happens. The light shifts. Those pale blues bleed into deep crimson. Gold becomes rust. The angels seem to brandish wounds that were never there before. Imagine stepping into an empty chapel as dawn breaks. The pews are old and worn. Dust drifts in sunbeams through cracked windows. You pause at the threshold, your breath fogging the cool air. Then you notice the windows. Each pane flames like living fire. The angels' faces glare down at you, their mouths set in silent screams. Their once gentle hands clutch at invisible wounds. Their eyes, once soft, burn with restless anger. At first you think it's just the sun, but this red glow doesn't fade as the sky brightens. It stays soaked in color, like blood pressed against glass. In that light, the chapel feels less like holy ground and more like a shrine built on grief. Shadows pool at the edges, curling up walls and around pillars. The air tastes metallic and the silence grows heavy, as if every breath draws in secret sorrow. I visited once at dawn. I slipped in through a broken side door. My flashlight cut through the gloom, resting on the windows. They were dull at first, ice-cold blue and pale yellow. I waited. As the sun rose, a single beam struck the central panel. The colors bled, shifting from blue to a swirl of red. I saw it seep along the lines of the lead frames, as if the windows themselves were bleeding. My legs shook. I stumbled back into a pew, heart slamming against my ribs. Then I heard it. A soft drip. No rain was falling, no leaks above. The drip echoed in the quiet. I looked up, expecting water. Instead, I saw a droplet of red run down the glass. It landed on the wooden sill and spread like ink. My skin burned with fear. I wanted to turn away, but I couldn't. The angels watched me. I felt their eyes follow every move. Legend says these windows were made from glass, salvaged after a terrible fire that destroyed the convent at nearby Willow Glen. They brought in a master glazier to reshape the shards into new art. They paid him handsomely, believing his work would heal old wounds. But the glazier vanished before the windows were even installed. They say he cursed the glass with his dying breath. He warned that anger and sorrow would stain the panes, claiming more souls than any fire could. Over the years, townsfolk began to whisper. They swore the windows had power. Some said they saw shapes moving behind the angels, dark figures shifting in the red light. Others claimed the angels themselves reached down at dawn, fingertips dripping with blood. No one dared stay in the chapel past sunrise. Those who tried reported headaches, nausea, and the feeling of sharp eyes boring into their backs. Many left town, never to return. Several attempts were made to replace the panels. A team from Portland arrived in 1952 with new glass and fresh designs. They took measurements, removed the old panels, and prepared the new ones. But on the night before installation, their workshop burned to the ground. Flames consumed every pane, every tool, every scrap of wood. No cause was ever found. Insurance investigators blamed an electrical fault, but locals say the red light reached down and set the building alight. In 1974, a group of university students tried to document the color change. They set up cameras on tripods and connected light meters. For 3 mornings they recorded the shift, but the 4th morning, when the cameras finally captured the full transformation, the tape was ruined. Every frame was nothing but static and deep red fuzz. The students claimed the chapel itself refused to be filmed. They left Oregon the next day, too shaken to speak of what they'd seen. The most chilling tale comes from the caretaker's granddaughter, a woman named Ruth. She grew up in the old manse beside the chapel. As a child, she used to play hide-and-seek among the pews. She said she once hid behind a column and watched the angels shift at dawn, saw their wings curl and uncurl like living creatures. She said she heard the soft drip and thought she glimpsed fingers at the glass, smearing the red liquid into shapes too dark to name. That day she ran screaming into the woods, and her grandmother never let her return. When the church considered sealing off the windows, the Archbishop himself intervened. He called the panes a testament to faith under trial, insisting that the blood-red light reminded worshippers that suffering and sacrifice are part of the holy story. So the windows remain, guarded by iron bars and regular prayers. But no one prays there at sunrise. They come later, after the glow has faded, to light candles for departed souls. Some nights, the wind howls through the broken side door. It rattles the hinges, fills the chapel with mournful sound. By dawn, the wind dies, the chapel falls silent, but the windows still scream in red, and the angels still watch. So if you ever find yourself at Holloway Chapel before dawn, heed the warnings, stand back, cover your eyes until the sun climbs high in the sky, because once you see those windows bleed, you may never escape the memory. The color will stain your sight forever, and the angel's sorrow will follow you home, tucked behind your eyelids each time the light shifts. These panes are more than mere glass. They are living wounds in the heart of the chapel. They remind us that faith can be twisted into fear, that beauty can mask horror, and that some art is made not to comfort, but to condemn. In those red-lit moments, you realize the true cost of the Holloway Nuns' secrets, and you understand why the villagers dare not speak of it, why they keep the chapel doors locked until the glow has died, and why, for all their prayers, they still tremble at the memory of angels in agony. They say the garden lies behind high stone walls, hidden from the world. Before dawn, the gates stand open just enough for a child to slip through. Inside, the air smells damp and heavy, like old earth. Thorns arch overhead, forming a tangled roof that lets in only the faintest light. Under those spiky arches, black roses open their petals to the grey sky. Their blooms are larger than any ordinary flower, and their edges curl like burned paper. No other plant in Holloway Manor looks so alive, yet these roses seem to drink in all the life around them. At the centre of the garden stands a rough stone table, its surface stained by rain and soil. On one side, a single wilted rose lies curled in a dark pool of dew. The petals have turned brittle, as if they have lost the will to live. Fresh footprints in the muddy paths lead from the gate to that dead bloom, and then they stop. No other prints follow. It is as if whoever walked here vanished into thin air. Locals whisper that the fallen rose marks where a chill's disappeared. They leave offerings, breadcrumbs, marbles, even a small wooden toy, hoping the spirit of the lost will find its way home. Among the villagers, stories circulate about Sister Adria, the eldest of the Holloway Nuns. They call her the keeper of this forbidden garden. She wears her habit trimmed with thorn motifs, as though she belongs more to the plants than to human company. By dawn, she moves among the rows of roses, touching each stem with gloved fingers. She hums a low, sorrowful tune, so soft that only the wind seems to carry it. No bird ever answers her song. No creature dares to live among those dark blossoms. Everything in the garden bows to her quiet presence. Children have dared to explore the garden alone. They creep past the stone walls, lured by the strange beauty of black roses. In hushed voices, they tell one another that the garden grants wishes. One boy hoped for a new coat, another girl wished for a lost kitten. They tiptoe along narrow paths, lined with petals that shine like wet ink. But as they step closer, the petals close shut. The girls and boys find themselves paralyzed by an unseen force. Their breath catches in their throats. Then the footprints vanish, and the children walk away, empty-handed, empty-hearted, never the same again. One morning, a butcher's boy arrived at Holloway Manor with fresh lamb shanks. He carried them in a wicker basket, lined with butcher paper. The meat was smooth and red, meant for a quiet Sunday meal. He did not expect to see the garden's open gate or the roses glistening with dew. He followed the path out of curiosity, ignoring every warning he had ever heard. As he stepped toward the table, a thorn caught his sleeve and tore a long rip. He looked down, startled, then spotted the wilted rose. He lowered his basket onto the stone, and a single shank rolled free. It clattered against the table's edge and fell to the ground. That was the last time anyone saw the butcher's boy. His mother came looking for him that afternoon, panicked by his absence. She found the basket still half full, and the lone lamb shank lying on the wet stone. Frantic, she searched the garden, calling his name. Only Sister Adria appeared, standing by the table. In her gloved hand, she held a torn piece of cloth, one of the butcher's boy's aprons. The cloth was covered in mud, and a single rose petal was pressed into its folds. The boy's mother fell to her knees and screamed for her son. Sister Adria said nothing. She slipped the apron into her habit pocket and closed the garden gate behind her. The police came the next day, lanterns swinging as they tore through the garden. They found no sign of the boy. No footprints beyond the wilted rose, no footprints leading away. They examined every thorn and every bloom. They pried open the stone table, but it was solid. They dug beneath the soil, but no child's body lay waiting. All they discovered was the butcher's boy's apron, folded as neatly as any relic. None of the officers dared to touch the black roses. They claimed the petals whispered his name as the wind passed through the arches. After that, the garden became forbidden. A simple wooden sign was nailed to the gate. Private grounds, no entry. But children still disappear. Rumor says the black roses crave the taste of fear, and the garden feeds on lost innocence. Parents warn their kids to stay away. Hunters avoid the paths. Even the manor's staff locks up at dusk, never leaving a light on near the wall. Some locals swear they hear small footsteps and soft sobs behind the gate, long after midnight has come and gone. They say the wilted rose still lies on the table, never fully decaying, as if it holds on to the life that once brushed against it. In the nights that follow a disappearance, neighbors hear Sister Adrao's aya humming in her chambers. The tune is the same, a lullaby for those she cannot release. They say she had a little brother once, long before her vows. He vanished one day, lost to a fever or a fall, she never says which. She planted the first black rose in his memory, hoping to bring him back. Instead, the garden grew hungry. It claimed child after child, mistaking them for her lost brother. Now, the garden blooms with sorrow, and Adria tends it with penitent hands, praying that each new bloom will heal her grief, but each black rose only deepens the wound. Even on the rare mornings when the sky is clear, the garden is cloaked in mist. The roses drip with droplets that resemble tears. When the sun rises, a shaft of light falls on the wilted rose. It changes color for a moment, a flicker of bright red, before sinking back into black. Some say you can catch that flash of red at the corner of your eye if you watch long enough. But if you blink, the color is gone, and so is the rose. Scholars have tried to understand the garden. They have studied the soil, the thorns, the petals. They found no poison, no hallucinogen, no magical essence. All they discovered was that the roses grow faster than any normal plant. They bloom without water, without sunlight. Even in winter, the bushes bear fruitless buds that never open. The garden defies logic, and those who study it are drawn into its mystery. Few return to tell the tale, and those who do speak only in whispers, their words trailing off as if caught on a thorn. The manor itself watches over the garden like a silent guardian. Its windows look out on the wall, and at dawn the light spills across the stones like a warning banner. Inside, candle flames flicker at every turn, as if urging people to remember the danger. Yet the signs are ignored, the warnings dismissed. Curiosity is a stronger lure than caution. Soon another citizen. Hild will vanish. Another apron will appear in Sister Adria's hand. Another wilted rose will mark the place where innocence met darkness. Tonight, the garden waits in silence. The thorns shift in the breeze and the roses sigh in their sleep. The stone table holds its cold vigil. Footprints may appear at dawn, leading inside, or they may lead to the gate, returning a hollow echo of life that once filled them. Either way, the garden will claim its due. It always does. So if you ever find the walls of Holloway Manor looming in the fog, heed the warnings. Do not follow the path lined with black roses. Do not climb through the thorn-choked gate. And above all, do not ask Sister Adria for a glimpse of her garden. For once you step among those blooms, you may lose something far more precious than your way. The garden may give you silence, but it will take your voice and a piece of your soul, without a single word spoken in return. They say the midnight air in Holloway Village feels different on the first full moon. The mist hangs low, swirling around lantern posts and creeping along the cobblestones. At exactly 12 o'clock, you might hear soft footsteps sliding through the fog. Those footsteps belong to 7 nuns dressed in heavy black habits. Each one carries a basket covered with a dark cloth. They move as one, silent and deliberate, like shadows gliding through a dream. Villagers peek through their windows and hold their candles tight, afraid to be seen. The flickering flames cast strange shapes on the walls. Mothers pull their children back from the glass, warning them not to watch. Fathers glance nervously at the door, worrying that if they look too long, the nuns might notice. But the witching hour is a rare chance for the curious. Some brave souls step onto their porches, listening as the procession passes by. The nuns do not speak. Their faces are hidden by deep hoods, and their gloved hands grip the basket's handles without shaking. The baskets sway gently with each measured step. You cannot say, what is inside the cloth covering, but you can almost feel its weight. Is it food? Is it flowers? Or something darker? No one knows. The baskets appear heavy, as if filled with stone. The road to the manor winds through old pine trees and crumbling stone walls. Moonlight filters through branches, creating a patchwork of light and shadow on the path. The nuns walk in single file, leaving neat footprints in the damp earth. Sometimes their cloaks brush the ground, wiping away their tracks, but their footprints remain, clear and unbroken. The villagers watch those prints fade as the nuns reach the gate. At the manor gate, the baskets stop moving. The nuns lift their arms together and set the baskets down on the gravel. Then they step backward, rising onto their tiptoes as if pulled by strings, and disappear into the mist. Their footprints vanish too, leaving no proof they were ever there. In the cold light of dawn, the villagers hurry down to see the baskets, but the baskets are gone. Only the gravel shows where they rested. Some say the baskets carry offerings for the manor itself, food for hungry spirits, or tools for a dark ceremony. Others believe the baskets hold the souls of those who vanished long ago. No one has ever lifted the cloth to look inside. It would be too frightening. Imagine opening the cover and finding nothing but empty air, or worse, something that should not exist in our world. The next morning, every villager agrees on one thing. The procession must never be interrupted. If someone tried to follow the nuns, the mist would swallow them. Tried to touch a basket, and their hand would burn. Tried to steal one of the baskets, and it would vanish in their grasp. The manor stands silent on its hill, its windows like blank eyes watching the village below. It never explains the baskets, and it never returns them. Over the years, the story spreads to nearby towns. Travelers speak in hushed tones about the Holloway procession. Some scholars write about it in secret letters, locking them away when the ink still smells of fear. Ghost hunters stake out the lane on full moons, hoping to record the footsteps or catch a glimpse of the nuns. Their cameras feed on empty film. Their voice recorders capture only wind. Children who dare to sneak outside learn too late what the nuns carry. A girl once crept out and tripped over one of the baskets. She felt a chill, saw a dark shape inside, and screamed. By morning, she lay unconscious in her bed, her hair turned white. Her mother said she'd seen 7 pale faces staring from the basket's cover, and each nun had looked right at her. The girl never spoke of it again. The procession continues to this day, year after year. The baskets appear, the nuns walk, the baskets disappear. No questions are asked and no answers are given. Some villagers have tried to break the pattern, locking their doors, blocking the street, even burning lanterns to light the way. Nothing works. The nuns find another route, or the gate opens itself, or the lanterns drop dead at midnight. So each full moon the village holds its breath. Mothers tuck their children into bed early. Fathers double-check the locks. Everyone remembers what happened to the butcher's boy in the garden, what happened to the girl who peeked under the cloak, what happened to those whose footprints trailed off into the mist. 7 nuns, 7 baskets, and 84 souls carried away without a sound. If you ever find yourself in Holloway Village on a full moon, look away when the mist thickens. Do not follow the soft drumming of feet down the empty lane. Do not peek beneath a dark cloth. And do not try to stop the silent procession. Because once you see what they carry, you may never forget, and the nuns of Holloway will come for you next. Father Marcus was a quiet man, known for his gentle smile and steady faith. When he first heard whispers about the Holloway nuns, he thought it must be just village superstition. A man of God does not scare at shadows and ghost stories, he told himself. Still, as the missing count climbed past 50 souls, Father Marcus felt a duty to investigate. He believed that faith could conquer any darkness. Late one evening he pushed open the heavy oak door to the chapel. The air inside was cold and still. Moonlight streamed through the blood-red stained glass, painting strange shapes on the stone floor. Father Marcus gripped his leather journal in one hand and a simple iron key in the other. He had come to confront the nuns about the disappearances, to demand answers, and to ring the chapel bell in defiance. The bell tower had no rope. Local legend said the rope had rotted away long ago and no one dared replace it. But Father Marcus had brought his own cord, a thick leather strap crafted by the village blacksmith. He dragged a wooden stool under the bell's metal clapper and climbed up, careful not to slip on the ancient beams. High above the empty nave, he tied one end of the leather strap around his wrist and the other around the clapper. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a moment and pulled hard. The bell gave a single, clear ring that echoed through the night air like a challenge. Down below, in the dark pews, candle flames flickered as if stirred by an unseen wind. The echo faded, and for a heartbeat, everything was silent. Then from the shadows at the back of the chapel emerged 7 figures in black habits. Their veils hid their faces, but their slow, deliberate steps let Father Marcus know they were there. He climbed down and faced them alone, clutching his journal. "Sisters," he called out, voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "I demand you explain the children who vanish. I demand you show mercy, show God's light." There was no reply. The nuns moved closer, gliding forward without a sound. Father Marcus felt a chill brush past him. He opened his journal and flipped to a blank page. "I will write your words here," he said, voice firm. "If you speak, I will record your confession." The nuns stopped just a few feet away. The faint moonlight revealed sullen shapes where their eyes should be, their heads tilted as if listening to some distant sound. Then suddenly, the tallest sister reached out and touched his journal, her finger, pale and thin, pressed against the leather cover, and blood blossomed from a hidden wound on her wrist, dripping in slow droplets onto Father Marcus's hand. He yanked it back, startled. The ink in his journal turned bright red. He trembled but did not back down. "Mercy," he whispered, though he knew it would not come. "Mercy for these lost souls." A third sister stepped forward and raised a hand. The bracelet on her wrist glinted in the moonlight. It was the same bracelet worn by the butcher's boy when he delivered lamb shanks, and by the orphans when they arrived in their silent huddles. The mark of the sisters, Father Marcus realized in a cold flash. Before he could react, the tallest nun raised her hand again, this time revealing a small iron key identical to the one Father Marcus had used on the cabinet locks. She held it between 2 fingers as if offering him a choice, silence or harm. Father Marcus refused to yield. He raised his journal like a shield. "I will ring the bell again," he said, voice echoing in the still air, "and I will call down justice." With that, he ran for the stool and climbed the ladder once more, the nuns silent behind him. He tied the strap and pulled as hard as he could. The bell rang twice this time, louder and more urgent. Down in the chapel, the nuns remained motionless, but Father Marcus heard a low humming in the air, as though the walls themselves were chanting. His fingers ached, but he pulled a third time. The bell's final toll rang long and deep, shaking the rafters. Suddenly, the humming stopped. Father Marcus felt the floor shift beneath his feet. The ladder wobbled, and he lost his balance. He reached out for the rungs, but the rungs were gone. The entire ladder had vanished. He dropped. The impact knocked the journal from his hands. He hit the stone floor with a thud that rattled his bones. Pain exploded in his side, but he managed to twist his body away from the nuns who advanced on him. He tried to crawl toward the altar, calling for help, but his voice broke in a whisper. One of the nuns knelt beside him and placed a gloved hand over his mouth. Her touch was ice cold. Father Marcus struggled for breath. He felt her wrist against his throat, pressing until darkness crept into his vision. As he faded, he scribbled hurried words in his journal. "They warned me. Mercy is their weapon." The words were smeared with blood before the page tore free. The journal fell silent. In the morning, the villagers found the chapel empty. The bell tower still had no rope. The leather strap lay frayed on the floor. Father Marcus's journal was gone. No pages, no hint of what he had discovered. All that remained were his scattered osaries, their beads glinting like tears on the stone. No one spoke of Father Marcus again. Some said he had been taken upstairs to join the children in the locked cabinet. Others whispered that the nuns had finally claimed their first soul among adults. Only this was certain. After that night, the full moon processions grew more urgent, the bell tolled more often, and the missing count rose faster than ever. Father Marcus had come to bring light, but he left behind only a silence so heavy that no candle could pierce it. And in Holloway village, at the first toll of every bell, the villagers remember his warning: mercy can be a weapon as sharp as any blade. They say the county clerk worked late that night, long after everyone else had gone home. The old office smelled of paper and dust. Rows of metal filing cabinets lined the walls, each drawer holding decades of local records. He paused by one labelled Holloway Manor, fingers trembling as he slid it open. Inside lay a thick ledger, its spine cracked and pages yellowed with age. The clerk pulled it free and carried it to his desk. His lamp cast a small pool of light on the wooden surface. In the dim glow he saw neat rows of entries, each one almost identical. Received, complete, no remains. At first he thought it was a joke, but every line held the same curt phrase: no names, no dates, no explanations, just that single, chilling sentence. He flipped a few pages and felt a cold knot in his stomach. There were 93 entries matching the number of missing souls the villagers feared, but the Holloway Nuns were said to have brought only 84 children to the manor. 7 names were missing, or perhaps 7 more had vanished without any record at all. The clerk's heart pounded. He glanced toward the door as if expecting someone to burst in and stop him. Hands shaking, he read each line again: received, complete, no remains, over and over. It felt League Torm, Kia chant, a secret code that no one alive had the right to know. He leaned back in his chair, the creak echoing in the silent room. The ledger trembled in his hands as he tried to make sense of the stark words. Why so many? Why so few details? And what did complete mean in this terrible context? Then something moved in the corner of the room. The clerk froze. His eyes darted to the filing cabinets, half expecting a nun's habit to slip between the shadows, but nothing stirred. He swallowed hard, fighting the urge to flee. He knew that if the Holloway sisters discovered he had the ledger, he might never be seen again. And yet, he could not stop reading. Minutes passed like hours. He turned page after page, each entry tightening the grip of dread around his chest. He tried to jot down notes, but his pen hovered over an empty page, unable to form words. The lamp flickered, and he reached out to steady it. In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Suddenly, a soft thud sounded behind him. The clerk whirled around. The room was empty, but the front door had swung open on its hinges. A draft blew in, sending papers fluttering across the floor. The ledger slipped from his grasp and fell between the desks, landing face down on the parquet. He heard footsteps, slow, measured, coming from the hallway. He reached for his eyeglasses and pushed them onto his face, only to realize they were smeared with something dark. He touched a fingertip to the lens and saw crimson smudges under the lamplight. His breath caught. He tried to wipe them clean, but the smears would not budge. He blinked, heart hammering, as a voice drifted in from the corridor, soft, echoing, calling his name. Panic seized him. He bolted upright and snatched the ledger off the floor. He jammed it under his arm and ran for the exit. The footsteps followed, growing closer with each stride. He burst through the front door into the night air, the ledger clutched to his chest. The distant moonlight revealed only empty shadows. He kept running until the old office was far behind, its windows dark and silent once more. The next morning, the county clerk's house stood undisturbed. His neighbors reported he never returned home the night before. His car was in the driveway, the engine still warm. Inside the office, the ledger lay open on the floor, pages fluttering like the wings of a trapped bird. No sign of the clerk remained, except his eyeglasses, stained red, resting on his desk, as if waiting for him to come back and finish reading the last entry. To this day, no one knows what happened to the county clerk or why he vanished. The ledger sits in a locked drawer at the archive, untouched by any official's hand. Local legend claims that if you ever open it, you'll hear the soft whisper of 7 locks clicking shut, and another soul will be marked complete. The Holloway ledger remains one of the Manor's darkest mysteries, a silent record of souls lost and stories never told. They stand in the grand hall, these portraits of the Holloway sisters. Each painting is nearly life-size. Each sister wears a perfect black habit. Their faces are calm. Their eyes follow you across the room, but their mouths tell a different story. Look closer. Their lips are sealed shut in bright red. The color is too vivid, too real. It looks wet, as if someone just painted it on. Art experts took tiny samples. They tested them for pigments, dyes, any sign of paint. The lab reported back, it is not paint. Instead, the red substance was dried human blood, blood from an unknown donor. No record was kept of where it came from. No name was attached. The hall grew silent at the news. The villagers whispered among themselves. Who would do such a thing? Who would choose to seal those mouths in blood? What message were they sending? Before the experts could finish their report, the samples disappeared. A fire broke out in the lab. Flames consumed the testing equipment and the fragile slides. The building's sprinkler system failed. No sample survived. No record remained. Investigators arrived at the charred lab the next morning. They found the walls blackened. The windows melted. The air smelled of smoke and chemicals. There was no clue pointing to an accident. No broken wiring. No spilled chemicals. Just a room full of ashes and melted glass. The lab technician who first handled the blood samples refused to speak. He stared at the ruins with hollow eyes. He would only say, "It wasn't an accident." Then he left town for good. His home was found empty. His family had moved away. No forwarding address remained. Back at the manor, the portraits still hang on the wall. The red on the mouth seems brighter now, as if the flames only made it glow more. Visitors to the hall say they feel a whisper in the air, a soft voice that says, "Speak no more." Historians argue over the sisters' true identities. They ask if these women were real nuns or something else entirely. They wonder why their mouths were painted in blood. Some claim it was a curse. Others say it marks the price of silence. No matter the theory, one fact remains. The evidence has been destroyed. Those red lips, sealed forever in those portraits, are the only proof. The rest is gone, burned to ashes, lost in smoke. So when you walk the grand hall of Holloway Manor, look up at those painted mouths. Remember that the truth was almost revealed. Remember that someone did not want this secret known. And remember that the flames claimed every last piece of proof except those staring eyes and that cruel red seal. You can lock a door and block the world outside, but some spirits, some secrets, refuse to stay buried. In the back of the county archives, behind rows of dusty boxes, they found an ancient reel-to-reel recorder. The technician, heart pounding, placed the tape on the spindles and tightened the knobs. He pressed play. For 20 seconds, only static hissed through the speakers, as if the machine itself was waking from a long sleep. Then, out of the noise, a voice emerged, soft, calm, almost gentle. It was Sister Helena. Her words tasted of ice. "Speak, and you are dead." The silence that followed was heavier than any roar. Wires crackled, lights flickered. The hiss grew louder, then brighter, until the recorder's plastic case glowed white. The machine groaned once like a tortured scream, and then it melted. Metal dripped onto the wooden table, the tape warped into black puddles, the power cut out, plunging the room into darkness. When the lights returned, only a twisted shell of wires and gears remained. Everything else was gone. No other sound survived, no explanation. Only Sister Eleanor's calm whisper, her final sermon, remained etched in memory. Investigators replayed every recording they had, but nothing else spoke back. No hidden message, no warning. Just those two chilling words. They left the room haunted. Every ticking clock felt like a countdown. Every creaking floorboard sounded like a warning. Who had built that recorder? Why did it destroy itself? And what power had Sister Helena held even after death? Some say her spirit lingered in that tape, trapped until the moment someone dared to listen. Others believe the warning was meant for all who would pry too deeply into Holloway Manor's darkest secrets. One thing is certain. The final sermon of Sister Helena proved that some voices should never be heard, and some doors should never be opened. 7 sisters. 84 lost souls. 0 answers. We've walked the silent halls of Holloway Manor. We've heard the bell that tolls without a rope. We've seen the children in scarves, the urns with no ashes, and the stones laid in perfect pattern. We've smelled the roses that wither at dawn, and we've stared at portraits painted in blood. And still, the manor keeps its secrets. 84 names erased from every record. 84 children delivered, then vanished. No graves, no whispers of comfort. Only a ledger that reads, complete, a garden that claims its prey, and a recorder that melts at a single warning. What power did the Holloway sisters wield? What pact did they forge in the shadows? Why does the bell toll still, calling us back at 3:13 each night? Box 944B sits sealed beneath chapel stones, its code unread, its contents unknown. Inside that metal box lie 7 skulls, smiling, silent witnesses. Should we break its seal? Should we risk the final echo of Sister Helena's warning? Now it's your turn to decide. Do we dare unseal the box and face whatever breathes within, or do we let Holloway Manor keep its mysteries in the dark? Type unseal in the comments if you're brave enough to open box 914B. Type stay silent if you believe some secrets are best left buried. The choice is yours. Missing 84, found 0. Holloway Manor awaits your verdict. What happens next is up to you.